So you know how like every business wants their Acumatica system to be unique, right? With all those custom features they need.
Yeah.
But then it's like, how do you make sure all those customizations actually work? Like across all the different environments.
Right.
You got your sandbox for testing, then you've got your live production system. It can get pretty messy if things aren't set up just right.
Absolutely. And when those customizations don't play nice,
Yeah.
you're talking about deployments failing, operations getting disrupted,
Yeah.
and nobody wants that.
Definitely not. So to help us really dig into this, we have Mohammed Kalimra. He's a software engineer with a ton of experience, like over a year and a half, working specifically with Acumatica. He's worked on everything from customizations and system integrations to reports and business processes.
Sounds like the perfect person to guide us.
Totally. And the real focus of this deep dive is how do we manage all these dependencies, the server configurations, all the things that can trip us up in Acumatica.
So let's jump right in. Based on a case study we looked at, there were a few major problems that kept popping up. One of the biggest ones was dependency conflicts.
So like when different parts of the software just don't get along?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have customizations that rely on specific versions of libraries or components, and if those versions don't match up, things break.
Right,
And
right.
then there's the whole issue of inconsistent behavior. Like a customization works perfectly in your sandbox environment, but then you move it to production and boom, it's all messed up. These inconsistencies often turn into full-blown deployment errors, usually because of something funky with the server configuration or some missing piece of software. But the good news is they implemented some really smart solutions to tackle these problems. A big one was setting up strict version control for all their libraries and components. You basically lock down the specific versions of everything so there's no room for compatibility issues.
That makes a ton of sense.
And then they created this super cool validation script.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
It basically checks the server environment for any red flags before you even try to deploy anything.
Hmm.
Like, is the operating system correct? Is the .NET Framework version up to date? Things like that.
So it's like a safety net to catch potential problems early on.
Precisely. And to keep things organized, they used Acumatica's built-in system management tools to manage all the environment-specific settings in one central place.
Okay, that sounds really efficient.
And then, to be extra sure, they set up automated testing across all their different environments.
Smart move. So how did they even figure out all these problems were happening in the first place?
Well, it started with customer feedback. People were reporting issues with deployments, and they noticed a pattern. Things worked fine in one environment, but failed in another. Then they dug into the server logs and found errors pointing to missing dependencies or misconfigured settings. And they also realized that relying on manual updates and configurations was just asking for trouble. Let's break down those solutions a bit more. You mentioned dependency tracking. What did that look like in action?
I did. So they use something called NuGet packages, which are like pre-packaged bundles of code and files. Combine that with Acumatica's own customization tool to define, manage, and validate all the different software versions. And then there's that environment checker tool you mentioned. That sounded pretty slick.
Oh, it was. They actually wrote a custom script to automate the checks for server configuration and required libraries.
Clever. So like what kind of checks did it do?
Well, for example, it made sure the operating system was Windows Server, which is essential for Acumatica.
Nice.
And it also verified that the .NET Framework was at least version 4.8, which is another key requirement.
I see.
In C#, and it basically throws an error if the requirements aren't met.
Wow.
On top of that, they created configuration templates for their most common environment setups.
So like blueprints for setting things up correctly.
Yep. That helps standardize the process and reduce the chances of human error.
Very smart. Of course, you mentioned the automated and manual testing, which is always crucial.
Absolutely. So all these efforts, they really paid off.
Hmm.
The customer saw way fewer deployment failures, customizations behaved consistently across environments, and system maintenance became a whole lot easier.
Huge wins all around.
Paying attention to dependencies and server configuration is essential for smooth sailing.
For sure. Now, for our listeners out there, whether you're running a business or you're an Acumatica consultant yourself, if you're facing these kinds of challenges, you don't have to go it alone.
That's right. There are experts out there, like the folks at Tiana Solutions, who can help you navigate these complexities and optimize your Acumatica experience.
Exactly. How could a more strategic approach to managing your Acumatica environment help you achieve greater stability and free up your resources to focus on what really matters, like growing your business?
That's a great question to consider.
It really is.